Hello and welcome to episode 220 of. Sorry, where's that coming from? Sorry, where's that coming from? Let me close all of the things where that's. Let me close all of the things where that's.
I have my video muted.
You have your audio muted. I have my audio
We
muted.
have
Where's the
muted.
audio coming from? I know exactly where it's coming from. Okay, I muted it. Sorry, everybody.
Okay.
Let's try that again. I'm just gonna replay the jingle. Here we go. Hello and welcome to episode 220 of The Joy of Coding. I'm Mike Conley. I'm going to cut right to the chase. I've got a special guest to my left is Uri Wims. Uri Wims, how's it going? Who are you? What are you doing here?
Who am I? Nice to meet everyone. I'm Yuri. Currently, I'm a web developer at Ecobee, and I'm helping to build out our subscription service. And it's super exciting, innovative work. And I'm super excited to be here with you all and can't wait to start coding.
Awesome. Yeah, Yuri and I worked together in the Mozilla Toronto office for a couple of months. Yuri was a contractor for the foundation, and we bumped into each other a couple of times. And I think you were the one who reached out to me about, I don't know, someone connected us about maybe doing
It was
a Joy of
Abby.
Coding. Was it
It was
Abby?
Abby. Yeah, she
Okay.
tweeted and she was like, "Hey Yuri, you should definitely like ping Mike and see about like getting on the Joy of Coding." And I kind of put it off for a few months, and then I was like, "Ugh." Well, I did a few Mozilla developer YouTube videos,
Mhm.
and I was like, "Well, I can do this." So I reached back out to you, and I was like, "Hey, can we make this a reality? Can we make it happen?" And boom, we're here
Boom, we're
today,
here.
Canada Day.
Canada Day. Happy Canada Day, everybody. Yeah, so I'm so happy to have Yuri with us. We're going to be hacking on some Firefox stuff.
Oh
I
yeah.
want to just dive right into it. But before, I guess what I'll do is I'll share my screen. Sorry if I'm really excited. I'm like bouncy and excited because this is like a new
I love it.
situation. Yeah, like I'm just so completely stoked. So if I'm a little more unfocused than usual, I apologize. I'll start by sharing my screen. That's usually a good first step.
Definitely.
So let me just do that. That's a little more complicated now that we're using Zoom at the same time. So hold on. Let
So
me
many tools, so many
so
programs.
many tools. Hold on. Okay, and then I will move there. So at this point, normally you'd be able to see me in the bottom right hand corner, but I've taken that out because I didn't want to have it so that you could only see me and not see Yuri. And I wasn't able to figure out a way of being able to see Yuri at the same time. So it's going to be voice only while we're looking at my screen. Yuri, you can see my screen, right?
Totally.
Cool. And yes, it looks like we are picking up Yuri. So this is how I'm hoping today is going to go. Just for the people who are new to the stream, I just want to emphasize no plan survives breakfast, especially today because like we are trying something brand new. We barely practiced the technology to make this happen. Like this is a stack of cards. And things could go horribly wrong. I'm running OBS and a virtual machine and Zoom and Firefox on a laptop that might just decide to shut down in the middle of the
Might just
stream.
explode.
It might just be overwhelmed. My home Wi-Fi might just decide to fold on us. So things might go wrong, but that's okay. You know, no plan survives breakfast. We're doing our best here, but you know, if things go wrong, that's okay. We'll do our best to recover. That's the first thing. The second thing is that there is an episode guide. You should check that out. That's completely viewer driven. If it's something that you are interested in checking out, you should, and that will allow you to like follow links. It'll have a copy of the agenda links, and you can follow things. And that actually reminds me, I skipped a step, which is the agenda. So we're looking at the agenda right now. This has some handy links on things like the contributor guide and like the or the episode guide and the bugs that we're going to be looking at today. And so if you're watching this on YouTube, check out the video description for a link to the agenda. If you're watching this on Air Mozilla, it'll be in the handouts section. And if you are on Twitch, let me drop it into the Twitch chat. Hey, there's a link to the agenda. And I think I forgot to give Yuri the link to the agenda, so that's your link as well. There's your link
Thank
to the
you.
agenda,
Thank you.
in case you need to follow links. Okay, so what are we working on today? Well, maybe first I'll talk a little bit about our setup because right now, like I've got this virtual machine with Windows 7 on it, and we've got a copy of VS Code here, and Yuri and I are connected using a plugin for for VS Code called Live Share, which allows us to work together in the same editor. So for example, if I were to open up a file like, well, let's just open up browser base. I'm going to open up Webrtc Indicator. Then I believe Yuri is also now able to see this document. Is that right?
Sure am.
And if you were to like start typing something, can I, where are you in this document? Is this you up here in the top left?
I am
yeah, that's Yuri.
Hello.
Perfect.
I'm Yuri.
So
spelled my name wrong.
That's fine. This is how we're able to collaborate. So we'll be able to work together in the same editor. We'll be using this machine, my virtual machine, to build and stuff, but we'll be able to see the same files and sort of explore the same code at the same time and talk about it and share that with all of you. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the problem.
But first, before we talk about the problem, do you mind if we just say hello to the people in the chat really quick?
Yeah, by all means, yeah.
Woohoo! All right,
hello.
So we got Hattie0 who said, signal. Love it. Love that emoji. Then we have Smurfd0 who said, boom. I don't know what face exactly that is, but
it's a smile emoji.
It kind of looks like a jigsaw from
Smurfd is asking if we'd like to play a game. Yes.
Yes. Smurfd0 said, boom. You were also quite lucky. Twitch had some issues until like 20 minutes ago, so lucky us.
Under the wire. Very good.
And then Genji Tron said, yes, live for the first time.
Excellent.
Woo-hoo.
Excellent. So happy to have everyone here in the Twitch chat. And if you are on Matrix, we are in the live hacking Matrix channel. Although, as I find that most of the conversation actually occurs in the Twitch chat. So that's probably where we'll be paying most attention. Okay. So the problem. There are two bugs that I picked that I thought would be interesting to work on today with Yuri. And they both have to do with the Webrtc Indicator Ui. And this is something that we've been working on the series for, I think, the past couple of streams. And it has to do with this little piece of UI. Let me demonstrate it, actually. So I'm going to go back to my, my virtual machine here. I'm going to open up Firefox. I apologize. It might be a little slow. This machine is very taxed right now. And Nightly is installing an update, so give that a second. Come on. In the meantime, oh yeah, gotta get them updates for sure. In the meantime, I'm drinking ginger beer, homemade ginger beer today, non-alcoholic ginger beer. What is it that you are consuming today, Yuri?
I am consuming H2O.
You've got water? Nice. You got any snacks?
I do. I have an entire tray of almonds to my right, ready to snack, maybe give some nice dev ASMR moments.
Outstanding. We'll see. All right. So I'm going to show the little indicator. So I'm at this website called Get Display Media Demo on a site called Webrtc Experiment. This is going to just demonstrate the UI. This is what we use to select what screen I want to share. And in this case, I'm just going to share actually the window, the Firefox window. So I'll allow it. And so we've got this little indicator here at the bottom to let, my VM is going to glitch out a little bit, but this little indicator is what's being used to tell the user, hey, you're sharing the browser. You're sharing Nightly in this case. Do you want to stop sharing? So this little rectangle here is what we're going to be working with. And in particular, there's a problem with high contrast mode. So high contrast mode is something that Windows and I think Linux offers, where if you turn on high contrast mode, it makes it easier for people with like certain visual disabilities or visual impairments to see things. So for example, high contrast mode allows you to have like a really dark backgrounds and really bright text, so it's much easier to see the text. And unfortunately, in high contrast mode, apparently the indicator is really unreadable. Like this is a screenshot of the indicator on Windows in high contrast mode, and there's supposed to be a block of text right here, and it's basically white on gray. It's unreadable, completely unreadable. So that's what I'm hoping we can start with today, is trying to figure out how best to deal with the theming and high contrast mode. So what I think we need to start with is some of the files we're going to work with. Yuri and I, we had discussed a little bit about some of the files we're going to mostly need to look at. And for this one, I think we're going to be looking at one called Webrtc Indicator, under themes, actually. It's browser. Actually, you're the one who knows VS Code better than I do. How do I, what's the best way to quickly get to a file in VS Code?
So what type of machine do you have? Do you have Windows, Mac?
This is for the Windows virtual machine running. So let's say Windows for now.
Okay, well, I use Command P on my Mac, so I'm not sure.
Oh, Control P, that
Ooh,
worked for me.
perfect. So then
Yeah,
just search
this
the
is
file name.
exactly what I want. Perfect. WebRTC Indicator Inc.css. That's what I wanted. So this is
Nice.
the majority of the CSS that we're going to probably be working with. I don't think actually that we're going to have to mess with any of the because this is the shared CSS that's used across platforms. I don't think we're going to need to do a special one for Windows or Linux. We probably can do it in the shared one. I don't actually know that for sure, but I think we can. The first thing I want to do, I'll suggest, Yuri, is that we actually try and demonstrate the problem on the machine itself.
Actually, as an alternative, if you don't mind,
Sure.
I propose we actually walk through the Bugzilla bug
Sure.
and just walk through kind of like what the description means, the different categories, and the different details in the open bug in Bugzilla.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great idea. So
Sweet.
here's the thing about Bugzilla. It is so overwhelming. There's a lot of information. It's very information dense, especially if you're used to something like GitHub issues where, I think it's a little more streamlined and it gets right to the conversation. Bugzilla is incredibly information dense. So I'm going to sort of highlight the things that I pay attention to whenever I'm looking at Bugzilla. This is probably the most important thing to start, the summary at the top to tell us, what is it that we're looking at here? What kind of bug is this? And so the bug is saying, the text on the global sharing overlay when you're sharing a screen is not displayed correctly in high contrast on Windows or on a dark theme on Linux. So that's just a general description of what we're dealing with. And then all of this stuff in these rectangles are categorizations for this bug. It's well, this bug is for this particular product in this component, site permissions for this particular platform. It's these are the categories and the facets and the way that the bug has been bucketed. And then it's what kind of bug is it? Is it a defect? It's an enhancement, etc. And then there's a bunch of stuff in here that I think we can safely ignore. Who's watching the bug and what other bugs are related to this bug. Maybe this would be interesting to look at just to get a sense of other similar bugs. There was a duplicate of this bug filed where the overlay is incorrectly displayed while in high contrast theme on Windows. So someone filed a similar bug and it was duplicated to this one. So it's good to know that other people have been experiencing this enough, so much so that they filed a separate bug.
Right, that's a good point.
Yeah. And then this is probably where the real juice is this first comment, which is usually the bug description. And this was filed by Daniel Bodea. And let's see. Did you want me to read it, or did you want to read it, or did you want to take turns, or how did you want to do it?
Oh no, you're doing fine, but I did have one quick question before
Sure.
we move on to this one. Say, for example, if I'm a contributor and I pretend I wasn't on this live stream with you dealing with this bug. I was working on it on my own and I wanted to contribute. If I had questions, would I reach out to the triage owner or maybe the reporter?
That's a
Or
really
how
good
would I
question.
go about asking questions, how best to contribute to this bug?
That's a great question. So this is the sort of bug where it hasn't been identified as a good first bug for contribution. Even though it is, I actually think this is a decent bug for a new contributor, but it wasn't marked that way. And the way it would be marked, I'm going to edit one of the fields, is if there was a mentors field entry. So I'm actually going to put my name in here. So whenever you have the mentors field filled out, this is the sort of person you probably want to talk to if you have questions about a bug, a good first bug. And failing that, talking to the triage owner is a great idea. And the way you talk to them is by adding a comment at the bottom and say, like, I have a question, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then the best way to make sure it doesn't fall off their radar is to check this box at the bottom where you say you request information from. So you check the box and then you say who you're requesting information from. You could request information from the person who reported the bug. You can sometimes request information from yourself. It's almost like adding a to-do for yourself. You can request information from the mentor, or you can request information from the triage owner. And what that does is it puts that need info, is what we call them, into a list, so that people know, oh, someone has requested information from you on this particular bug, and then they can work through that list when they have time. So that's a great way of making sure that your question isn't forgotten. That was a really, really great point. I always forget what it's like to look at Bugzilla for the first time because I work with it so often, so I don't really see it with fresh eyes. Do you have any other things you want to go over in this view, this really noisy view, before we?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do.
Sure.
I do have like one or two additional questions, but really quickly going to stop and say, what's up? Back to friends with friends with beneficiaries. Hi, welcome. And then Akra said, don't forget to save changes now to see if it works.
Oh, he wants me to actually request information for myself? All right.
Yeah, let's request
request
information from yourself.
Test message for the stream. So save changes. So sorry for the people who are CC'd on this bug who just got got emailed about this, but so now there's like a need info flag on this, and then whenever now that I'm the person who's targeted for the need info, it's in my list. I don't know if you saw that count. It went up by 1. That's not 33 need infos, by the way. That's like reviews as well as need infos. So I have a bunch of need infos to get through. But whenever I answer this question, I could be like, here's the answer. Welcome to the bug 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I'll save changes. That will add the comment and it will clear the need info on me. And that means that if you have a follow-up question, say I'm having a conversation with someone, it's a good idea to need info them, just to make sure that the questions don't fall off their radar. Because that's really easy to do. You've got so many bugs you're paying attention to. It's kind of like email, where you can quickly and easily forget I'm having a conversation with someone because I'm having 1,000 conversations all at the same time. So having a need info is like, it really helps reinforce the conversation. And so the way you do that is I'll answer this question. Again, sorry for all the test comments. And then I'll just request information again. And it doesn't have to be the reporter, the mentor, or the triage owner. It can be anyone. You can set it to other and then just put their Bugzilla email address in here. In my case, it's mconley@mozilla.com. And you can request information from me. Or I don't know if you have a Bugzilla account, Yuri. Do you?
Unfortunately, I no longer have a Bugzilla account.
Oh, well, if and when you got one, you could find Yuri in this list and request information from Yuri.
For sure. And then Nils IRL said, thank you. I'm really lost whenever I look at Bugzilla. And honestly, Nils IRL, me too. even even when I worked at Mozilla, Bugzilla was something that I honestly avoided because every time I would go to Bugzilla, it would stress me out to look at all of the information. And I'm just like, okay, what exactly is the bug? Who owns this bug? And how do I go about fixing it? Yeah. So it's not very clear, and it's definitely not easy on the eyes. So please, in the chat, if you have any questions about Bugzilla and how exactly to assess the bug and how to actually start those beginning steps in triaging and fixing the bug, please feel free to ask us. Mike clearly has all of the answers and he can definitely help. I'm learning a lot, so please.
it's the sort of thing that I take for granted because, again, like I've been looking at Bugzilla for so long, and I know what to ignore. I think that's the important superpower. Is it's not what to pay attention to; it's what you can safely ignore. And I think I often, whenever I'm looking at just if I want to know what is the bug, oftentimes these first bunch of boxes, I'll ignore them. I'll just ignore everything from here. Like anything that's collapsible here, I'm just going to collapse them all. Okay. I can safely ignore those if I'm just trying to get an understanding of what the bug is. Because all of this is about, this is context of like where the bug is categorized, who's watching the bug, and who's associated with the bug, and other bugs I reference. But if I just want to know what the bug is, I'll read the summary, and then I'll read the description, which is the first comment. And then I might read some of the conversation that's happening in the bug. These are like comments as well as descriptions of changes that have happened to the bug over time. So in this case, like I duped a bug. I marked a bug as a duplicate of this bug 8 days ago. And then in this, it's saying I set the priority from nothing to priority 1 8 days ago. And then Daniel Bodea changed the summary from this, and then it's arrow to this. And then I added myself as a mentor 5 minutes ago, and then comment and answer. So that's like how you can view the conversation in Bugzilla and what's being talked about. But in this particular bug, this is the most important stuff, I think. It's the description of what the filer, in this case, Daniel Bodea, what he was experiencing. And this is like an example of a really, really high quality bug report. Because not only do we have like a screenshot that really demonstrates what he was seeing, but also steps to reproduce. That is so important.
Definitely.
It's like whenever you're filing bugs at Ecobee, like I presume you use something like GitHub issues for bugs. Is that
we actually use Jira. So we use Jira tickets. And we have our acceptance criteria. We have the different steps to reproduce them, definitely. And we also use like the affected platform section, but this is definitely a bit more detailed than what we usually use. But this is definitely like super helpful. Right. Okra said that when they file a bug, they attach patch.
Well, okay, so yeah, I mean, you're showing off a little bit there, Okras, but we appreciate it. Like,
why are you so fancy, Okras?
Yeah, like that's the best. Whenever someone's like, "I found a problem, also I solved it for you," like that's the best. if someone shows up with the patch, that's great. It's not obligatory. You can certainly file a bug and not attach a patch, but if you can attach a patch, by all means, like that. That's great. At least you can get sort of the ball rolling in the right direction, for sure.
For sure, definitely.
Okay, so in this bug, Daniel Bodea is saying that there are a couple of notes here. It's like when the user activates high contrast and shares their screen in a conference, they'll notice that the text on the global sharing indicator is not being displayed. Okay, that's true. It is actually being displayed, but you probably can't tell. It's just white on gray, so basically invisible. And then we've got the affected versions here. Beta did show this behavior whenever the indicator was on in beta, but the indicator is currently held to nightly, so it's not on beta. It's only on nightly right now.
Okay.
It looks like he tested platforms Windows 10 and Windows 7. I don't have a Windows 10 VM on this machine, so that's why I booted up the Windows 7 VM for us to work on. And then here are the steps to reproduce. So you flip these prefs. These prefs are actually flipped by default in nightly right now, so we don't actually have to do these steps. The silencing of notifications and the legacy global indicator has been turned off, so we don't have to worry about that. But this we do have to do. We have to turn on a high contrast theme from the OS settings, and I'll show how I do that in Windows in just a second. And then we engage in a video conference and share a screen or window, and then we just look at the indicator. So I was hoping to do that next. Does that sound good, Yuri, if I show high contrast mode in my Windows 7 VM and we see what this thing looks like?
So yes and no. That's a great step, but in that transitionary step, how are we actually getting the source code to work on this bug?
Oh.
Remember, I'm a new contributor.
Right. How did you get the source code?
Yeah, where's the source code at?
Wow. Okay. Yeah, we're starting from yeah, that's very important. I can't believe I forgot that. So if I'm a new contributor, and it's like I've looked at a bug and I'm interested. How do I get started? There is a how to start contributing to Firefox. I believe there is a document contributing to the Mozilla codebase. And I'm going to put this in the agenda under here. I'll also put special guest Yuri Wims.
Me.
Yes. And here's a link to the developer guide contributing to the Mozilla codebase. And there's a lot of stuff you can contribute to. There are a lot of projects underway. And so we have to kind of focus in on Firefox desktop. And in particular, what we're dealing with is the front end of Firefox. And so, like, these are the different categories of things that one could contribute to. And so I'm going to choose Firefox front end. We'll do the Firefox developers doc.
Did something in the Bugzilla report tell us that we're dealing with the Firefox front end? Was there something I can point to?
Good question. So if we go back here, I'm going to open these back up again. So under categories, the product is Firefox in this case. And whenever it talks about Firefox, there's a little bit of like history here where Firefox was always like, it started as a desktop browser. Eventually the mobile browser showed up, but Bugzilla and Firefox kind of went hand in hand. Whenever Firefox was released, Bugzilla also existed around the same time. It's like the Netscape era. And so whenever Bugzilla talks about Firefox, it means the desktop browser. Whenever it talks about Firefox for Android, like if I were to enter a new bug, there's like a Firefox for Android section or a product. And then Firefox for iOS, excuse me. But if it's just talking about Firefox, then it's talking about desktop.
That's nice to know.
And so if you hover this, you actually get a little bit of extra information. I saw it just a second. I don't know where it went. There. So for bugs in Firefox desktop, the Mozilla Foundation's web browser. And so it's for things like menus, bookmarks, location bar, and preferences. Many bugs will either be filed here or in the core product. Bugs for developer tools should be filed in the DevTools product. And then you can follow more info for like additional filing information. And whenever you file a bug in Bugzilla, sometimes you'll get the wrong component, and that's okay. The triage owner's job is to make sure that stuff gets put in the right spot. And especially because like there are so many components. Like if I'm filing a bug for Firefox, the experience actually is different for me than it would be for a new contributor. I have what's called edit bugs privileges, which gives me sort of an elevated view of what Bugzilla looks like internally. So this is not what a person generally sees, a new contributor would see whenever they file a bug, but it does demonstrate how many different components there are that you can file within Firefox desktop. And it seems overwhelming, but the thing to realize is that like these are buckets, and Bugzilla is just trying to make things go into the right bucket. And if you're really not sure, there's an untriaged bucket. There's also a general bucket. And I believe if you are a new contributor and you've got a new Bugzilla account, what you end up seeing is a very simplified version of this form, and all of your bugs just go into general or into untriaged. It's one of those two. And then it becomes our job, our bug triagers and bug herders job to like put it in the right component. So that's not a thing that the reporter needs to worry about. It's something that the people managing Bugzilla will like slot it in the right spot. So we try and make it Bugzilla is not a very good experience, but we do our best to iron out all of the rough edges where possible, and that's one of the places where we do that. So like I don't know how to
transparency.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, like I don't know how to make it look like what it looks like for a new contributor. Bugzilla helper. It might be like this, where you like enter a bug, and then you type in the sentence. So it'll be like, let's see, the indicator is hard to see, and then it will ask to see if like there's a pre-existing issue that you might want to follow instead of filing a new bug. And you say, my issue's not listed if it's a new issue. And then you like fill in this extra stuff. And notice that this is a much simplified version of the form we saw earlier. I don't have to worry about the component. It's just saying like which product. And then if you want, like you can fill in what steps to reproduce the problem. What happened whenever I tried, like, what's the problem basically is what happened, and what should have happened is what I expected. And then you can attach screenshots or a video or you know, a dump, like a crash dump or something if you're dealing with a crash, and then you can sort of talk about what kind of bug this is. Like, maybe I want a new feature. Maybe a bug is actually a feature request, in which case, you know, you can say this is a request for an enhancement. And if it's a security bug and a bug that could harm people, for example, say you're a security researcher and you've found a vulnerability. Wow, sandbox escape, and you can take over someone's computer. That's great to know. You want to click this box right here because that's going to hide the bug from the public while making sure our security team can like fix the bug ASAP in a secure way, because we don't want to tell people, we don't want to publish security bugs until the fix is out there, because we don't want our users to get completely owned. So do definitely check that box. Yeah. And if you've got additional details, this is interesting. I've never seen this before. If you're like, this is a problem with Firefox for Android, it looks like this is how you deal with that. You just say like, there's a problem with Firefox on my phone or tablet, and it looks like it'll try and slot it in the right place. So I think it's a little bit better for a new contributor or like someone who's new to Bugzilla.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think the simplified form is definitely a much better experience for me as a new contributor. What do you guys think? Do you all think in the chat is the simplified form easier for you as a new contributor, or do you find it just better to have all the information up front? So Mastic Warrior _warrior said it looks very first timer friendly, sweet, and then also yay, another joy of coding. So excited you're excited. And Danny Collincom said, happy moving day.
Yes, I recently learned this. I think I always knew it, but I relearned it. Is that in Quebec, in Canada, in Quebec, the province of Quebec, today actually coincides with everyone's like short-term rental leases expiring.
Oh.
So everyone moves. Like if a bunch of people change their their living situations on July 1st. And so, you know, Canada, a bunch of Canada might be celebrating Canada Day, but in Quebec, everyone's like renting moving trucks and moving. So they call it moving day.
Oh, wow. Sweet. Fun fact. This is like a history 101 lesson here today.
Okay. Here's another thing I did just real quick. I opened up a private browsing window so that I'm not logged into Bugzilla. And this is what the bug looks like if I were to load this bug for the very first time. And notice that it hides a bunch of stuff by default. Like the people references and details are collapsed by default. There's still a lot of information. I mean, it's not perfect, but a bunch of information has been hidden, and it tries to get you to the juice. It tries to get you to the most important part sooner. But this is what it looks like if you're a first timer. So those were all great points. Any other questions about Bugzilla from either the chat or from Yuri?
Nope, it looks like we're all clear to dive directly into the code base. Let's do it.
Okay. Now you were talking about like how to get the code. So I would follow the developer's documentation. There's like a really nice like working on Firefox document, like how to get started, contributors quick reference. So like how to clone the repository, how to build, like get the dependencies. If you're on Windows, it's a little bit different. Like unfortunately, the Windows build and development experience for Firefox is kind of new and special, or not, I shouldn't say new and special, but different and special, especially because a lot of the tools that historically we used for building on Windows we tried to only use open source stuff. And so that meant that like we ship with the a special thing called Mozilla build with a whole bunch of open source tools in it, including like the Vim editor and Git and Mercurial and whatnot. But it does make it a little bit funky to work with the Firefox code base on Windows, but you can do it. And we use Clang now, I believe, to the Clang compiler to build on Windows. So I think that makes it a little bit easier to not have to install like Visual Studio if you don't want it.
Oh, right.
Because historically, I think we use the Visual Studio compiler, like Visual C++, to compile a bunch of Firefox stuff. But now I think if you run mock bootstrap, I think it tries to get you Clang. the Clang compiler, which is an open source compiler. So these are the instructions I would read. So I'm going to dump these also into the agenda. These are really I'm really thankful, Yuri, for asking the question, because I always forget
Of course.
how to get started. Like it's the thing that I never think about, because I did it once and I never did it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's pretend that we've got the source code, because we do. So I'm going to bring up my virtual machine again. And here's the CSS. And we've got our little indicator here. What I'm going to do actually is I'm going to try and switch us to that high contrast mode on Windows. Okay. So the way I do that, here, let me start from the very beginning. I'm going to also stop sharing, and I'll close Firefox. I want to start right from the very beginning. What I do to start us in high contrast mode is close all of these error messages. First, let me close all of the error messages that are being spammed at me. How do I get me out of here?
Work.
Close all windows. No.
Force quit.
Force quit. Get me.
Escape. Get out of here. Get out.
What is Windows trying to do to me? Close everything. If this... Yes, I do. All right. No.
Oh, no.
Okay, I'm going to ignore those dialogues because apparently touching those causes IE to open, and I definitely don't want that. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to right-click on the background. I'm going to choose Personalize.
Mastic_warrior has a tip. They said Alt plus F4.
Yeah, Alt F4. It's the classic on Windows. That'll just, you spam that, you just close everything. So I'm in the personalization part of the desktop. Let me actually do that again. Right-click, Personalize. And then if you scroll right down to the bottom under Arrow Themes, there are all these basic and high contrast themes. I'm going to switch to High Contrast 1. So here we go. And this High Contrast 1 is to address a particular type of visual, I guess, what am I looking for?
I think it's okay to say visual impairment.
Impairment? Yeah, visual impairment. Yeah. I was about to say like visual configuration, but I'm like, people aren't machines. That's crazy.
No, people are not robots.
Yeah. So this is Windows using a high contrast 1. Like you'll notice that the background immediately just it's all black. We've got white borders around everything, and the text is white on black. And sometimes it's yellow on black, and other times it's purple on black. And apparently this is enough information, like visually enough information for someone with a particular type of visual impairment to be able to see things more easily. So now let's check to see what that indicator looks like in Firefox. Now the reason I shut down Firefox and I'm starting it up again is that I think Firefox isn't really great at dealing with OS theme changes while it's running. I think it actually it freaks out a little bit. It goes like, like half of it will retheme and half of it won't, because caches. He says, shrugging, but that's why I shut it down. So now I'm going to go to that site, WebRTC Experiment, and I'm going to find the Get Display Media demo. I should really, you know what? It's probably in my Get Display Media. It's in my history. Here we go. So I'm going to say Get Display Media API, and I'm going to get this window. And yeah, we have reproduced the bug. Look at this. Look at this. Can't read anything, but there is text here. In this case, it's actually yellow on white.
Wow. This is
really
definitely not AA compliant at all.
Absolutely.
Oh,
absolutely
goodness.
AA. What is AA compliant, Yuri?
Well, there's 3 different levels, and by the way, please take what I say with a grain of salt. I am not an expert by any means.
Neither am I.
I am a work in progress with accessibility each and every day, learning and growing. But as far as I know, there are 3 different levels for accessibility. There's A compliance, AA compliance, and AAA compliance. And based on those different levels, they have different requirements. So as you move up in the levels of compliance, you meet more of those accessibility standards and guidelines. And the goal for most organizations and companies and or products is that you at least meet AA compliance. AAA is very fine grained,
That's like the
and
best one, right? AAA is the
it's the
best.
best one, but
Yeah.
it's very hard to achieve. Um, but you really want to at least try to get AA compliant if possible. Yeah, that's the bare minimum really nowadays. It's 2020. Please, everyone, AA
So
compliance.
so let's see here. We got yellow on white. That would probably be like a D minus, like a F compliance. Like I don't
Yeah,
know,
that's
the
like I
zero.
don't
Like
even
what do
think
they
that's
grade
A.
that?
I just think it's non-compliant.
Non-compliant. They just table flip. It's just the
It's
table flip
terrible.
emoji. Yeah.
Basically. Oh no,
Okay.
better yet, it's like the dog meme where like he's
Oh, this is
sitting and
fine.
like yeah, like this is fine and everything's burning around him. Like, oh, this is fine.
Actually, pro tip. Like we've established that there's a problem here. Great. And we'll work with that in a second. But I wanted to show something that I just thought of. And you probably are more familiar with this tool than I am, Yuri, because you gave a really excellent demonstration video about the accessibility dev tools in Firefox.
Ah,
Um,
yes.
but we have like the ability to inspect. Well, I just realized now that the dev tools are not rendered using high contrast mode. That's a problem. See, like Firefox is not perfectly high contrast mode compliant. There are parts that just don't work. It's a work in progress. But one of the things you can do is if you have your dev tools open and you turn on the accessibility tools, you
Mhm.
can start inspecting things like the compliance of the contrast. So notice I've just inspected this region of text, and we can see in this little pop-up it says contrast, and then it shows the two colors, the yellow in the foreground and the black in the background. That might be kind of hard to see because it's a little small, but that's yellow in the foreground, black in the background, and then it produces a number, which is some kind of contrast ratio, I believe, using some fancy color math. But what's most important is the indicator afterwards, in this case AAA, which, as Yuri said, that's the best.
That
So in
is
this,
the best.
that is the best. So like we've got yellow on black, so good for visual, for like visibility and for contrast, contrast accessibility. So this is great, and this is actually something that the site is getting for free because I think it's just using black on white. Like whenever high contrast mode is off and when high contrast mode is on, Firefox
Mhm.
just knows to go, okay, well, yellow on black.
Right.
So it's getting that for free. All right. So now that we know that this indicator is not readable, I think maybe it's time to think about what we want to see as the solution. Like that's what I like to do. Oh, what's up, Yuri? What's up?
Sorry, you all clearly can't see me, but I was waving my hands
We
frantically.
we agreed.
We agreed that was the signal.
That's the signal. The Kermit
So
arms.
I just really, before we go any further, I want to get to Danny Colin Com's question.
Yep.
Danny Colin Com said, just curious, is it possible to build Firefox on WSL2?
That's a great question. So for the people who don't know, WSL2 is Windows Subsystem for Linux, and basically modern versions of Windows 10, which, you know, if Windows 7 I think is end of life, so hopefully most people are running Windows 10. But I know a bunch of people aren't, and that's fine. But like Windows 10 ships with a thing called Windows Subsystem for Linux. I don't think by default. You have to get it. You have to turn it on. It's buried in the developer tools. But basically, it allows you to run Linux within Windows. It's not exactly virtualization. Like it's not like you're running an Ubuntu VM or something. It's basically they've found a way of, I think it's like closer to Wine, where like they make parts of Windows seem like Linux for Linux executables, and then it puts those executables in a special place, and then you can run like tools that have been compiled traditionally for Linux. You can run them on Windows. Mastic Warrior, who is probably much more familiar with the actual inner workings of this than I am, because I've never used WSL2. He says it's virtualization. Okay, so it's a VM. My bad. It's a virtualization. I was just making stuff up. Cool. And so if the question is, does Firefox build under WSL2? I think the answer is yes, but I think it's slower. Oh, WSL1 was system calls. Oh, so they shipped a new version that does virtualization. Okay. So maybe it's not slower. It used to be that you could build it on WSL, but it was slower. But if they're doing virtualization, it's the weirdest thing. Whenever I run Linux in a VM on Windows, I always find that it builds faster in the VM than it does on the host machine. And that's because disk access, like the way that the disk access virtualization works in my virtual machine is better than NTFS, which is the file system that Windows uses. Long story short, yes, you can build Firefox under WSL2. Sorry for the ramble. Oh, we've got other people.
So many experts in the chat.
Yeah.
I love it.
Dr. Goldfire writes, I know Dr. Goldfire. That's Molly Howell. Molly Howell is like one of our Windows experts at Mozilla. WSL2 is... Hi, Molly. WSL2 is faster to build, but it's tricky to set it up to do a build that targets Windows right now. We don't really have that ready to use. Okay. Glandium did a bunch of work to support cross-compiles for Windows from Linux, but it's not packaged up neatly for someone to do from WSL2. And Dr. Goldfire, also known as Molly Howell, says hello. You should check out Dr. Goldfire, aka Molly Howell's Twitch stream. She plays like lots of old classic games. It's a great Twitch stream to follow. Okay, other things that we want to address before we start thinking about what we want to do for our solution here, Yuri.
Nope. Looks like we're good to go.
All right, so let me bring up that indicator again, because I want to think about what the right thing to do is. Like, what do we want to see? That's oftentimes how I approach it. I know it doesn't sound very like I don't think I'm like breaking new ground here by talking about this, but trying to visualize what actually is the end goal here is important to figure out how you're going to solve the problem. It's like, what is the solution supposed to look like? And in my mind, I actually think that the yellow text isn't the problem. It's the background. Like, you know, in this case, we had yellow text kind of getting set by default by the browser engine, and the black background being set, and it's perfectly AAA compliant. And the reason that this one isn't compliant is because the background isn't the right color.
Right.
That's my thinking on this.
So what you're saying is we need to ensure that the background also follows the high contrast rules that are set when we personalize our settings.
Yeah, like we need to figure out why, like how does this dialog know to turn black, even though it's not black by default. It somehow knows to turn black in high contrast mode. How is that the case? That's why I'm hoping we can figure out. And then once we know how to do that, we can set that, like we can use the same technique on the background of this indicator. And maybe also, while we're at it, as a bonus, we can change the color of the icon, because the icon is going to be the wrong color. If it's a black background, the icon is going to be invisible, which not great.
That's a really good point. And since you also pointed out the icons, I would also take it even a step further to ensure that the stop sharing button, in addition to I assume that's a minimizing icon
yes, this
to the
is
right.
minimize. Yeah.
We probably need to do some color contrast checks on that to ensure that when it is actually following the high contrast rules, that those elements also support those the high contrast view.
Yes.
Because I don't think the blue would be good on black. I don't know.
I think you're right. Like if this background were to turn black, I have a feeling basically we're going to have to retheme this whole thing effectively whenever we're in high contrast mode. So yeah, what's the right way to do that? How do we make it look good in this mode? And I suspect that, come on, Visual. VS Code, don't do this to me. What happened? Oh, it was there. It was just redrawing. Okay. So interestingly, like if we look at the code, we can see that the indicator background color is hard coded. When I wrote this code, so I'm guilty, like hands in the air, guilty is me. But I hard coded the background color to this value. It's an RGB value. It's almost white. Oh, that's very handy. Did you know that? This is incredible. Like there's this like color picker built into VS Code. That's very handy.
Oh yeah.
Oh, VS Code, all the tricks,
VS Code for the win.
Yeah, if there are other tricks that I should know, Yuri, do let me know, because I'm very much I'm a Sublime Text Luddite.
Oh, well, let's step into the world of VS Code, shall we?
Yeah. Um, so the indicator background color is the one that I think we need to make sure changes, and it's used here on the body of the indicator. So for the people who might not be familiar with how like the innards of Firefox work, I'm just gonna briefly, I'm gonna blow your minds for a second here. The indicator is basically a web page. You can think of it as like a web page. It's styled with CSS. It uses something like HTML for its markup, and it uses JavaScript to like set up the wire up the logic for the button to do stuff and for the various buttons to do things effectively. And so CSS, which you may have used for theming your website, is what we're going to be modifying today to update the indicator. So that's just a pro tip. If you yourself are out there and you have got like web page editing skills, you can change CSS, you're comfortable with HTML, JavaScript, CSS, or you want to get comfortable with those things, that means that you can then hack on Firefox, on the Firefox UI, because it's written using those technologies. Mm-hmm. So yeah, how do we do the color contrast thing?
So I guess first, should we look to see where the other color contrast or high contrast settings are being set?
Like for the cases that do work?
Yeah, for the cases that do work, because likely we'll need to use that.
I completely agree. What I'm going to do actually is the glitching is really freaking me out. So I'm going to stop the sharing for now. But I'm going to open up a dialog which has the rules set, and then we can inspect them. So if I say like alert test, I want to understand if I use like the dev tools, I should be able to look at the styles that have been set here, and we can like inspect them. So I'm going to open up the Browser Toolbox. This is what we use to inspect the browser UI. If you're not familiar with the Browser Toolbox, again, it's not using high contrast mode, but these are like almost indistinguishable from the dev tools that you normally use to edit a website. Like that's kind of related to what I was just saying, where like Firefox is basically like a bunch of web pages, and so we use our built-in dev tools to debug the browser UI. So if you're familiar with the Firefox dev tools, then you can hack on the browser UI.
This is really cool. I've actually never used the Browser Toolbox.
This is probably the most handy tool outside of SearchFox for looking at code. This is probably the tool I use, and the editor for changing the code, and Mercurial for committing it. This is the tool I use the most for browser development, and maybe nice. Dump statements. So from here, I'm able to just like select a particular thing. Let's just select this region, and maybe we can like inspect the colors, because these rules I think are going to tell us what color we want things to be. Let me actually bring up the size here so it's easier for people to see.
In the meantime, Mystic_Warrior said this is some galaxy brain insight. My mind has been blown.
Yuri, we did our jobs right. We're blowing minds.
Success.
Yes. Bonuses. Canada Day bonuses for everybody. Okay. Let's see. So how do we want to do this? Like we've got this container.
Goldfire. Oh, sorry, really quickly, because I love this one. Dr. Goldfire has gone super meta.
Yeah.
This also means you can use the dev tools to inspect the dev tools.
Absolutely right.
Mind blown.
Absolutely right. I find that that's a very common pattern in software development. Like software developers like to put things inside themselves. Like self-hosting is like the ultimate goal. If you like, whenever they were writing the Rust compiler, if you're not familiar with Rust, it's a systems programming language that was developed, like incubated at Mozilla effectively. And it was written, the compiler was written, I think, using a language called OCaml. But eventually they were able to compile the compiler. They rewrote it using Rust, and then they used the OCaml compiler to take that Rust code to produce the next version of the Rust compiler. That's called self-hosting. So now Rust is written in Rust, which that's like, Yeah,
What?
that's the pattern. Like, that's a common pattern I find in software development, where like software developers are constantly taking the tail of a snake and trying to jam it down the throat of the same snake. I'm just like, yes, snake, eat
That's
your own
wild.
tail. Yeah. Inception. Folks, I think we may have stumbled on something here. I'm just noticing this now. Do you see these, Yuri?
I do.
These are special. I don't know if people have access to these on the web, but these, whenever they have like dash moz in front of them, these are called CSS prefixes, and it usually means that something is Mozilla specific.
Right.
And these two fields, I suspect, are what's causing the colors. Like, I'm going to try manipulating one. I'm going to say, instead of moz field, I'm going to say red. Yeah, that's what's setting that background color. Whoop, not Rebecca purple. And so I suspect that moz field and moz field text are dynamic values that will change based on like what the actual operating system demands of the software, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes total sense.
I'm going to, if it's all right, I'm going to just briefly check to see if there's any documentation about this. Field text.
Is there usually documentation on the dynamic values?
Sometimes. So I'm going to be completely honest. Our documentation for Mozilla, the Firefox codebase, is pretty spotty. Our web documentation for like the web platform is spot on. Like
100%.
all of it, like our
Plus
it's
one
and
on
it's
that.
yeah, it's like all of the browser vendors have basically collaborated together to make MDN the place to go to for web documentation. That means it's not just Firefox stuff. We've got developers from Chrome and Safari and Microsoft and like I think Opera people, they're all like hacking on making sure that the MDN documents are up to date. So that's where you want to go for things that are like just across the web for your websites. For internal stuff like the Firefox code base documentation, it's pretty spotty. And so this stuff that I'm looking for, moz field text, it would not surprise me if we're not going to find it. But I'll also say that sometimes you get lucky. Like, check this out. There's some reference here. There, I saw it. Field text. Let me, field text. So this is exactly what I was hoping for. A big dictionary. So where is it? Where is it? Moz.
Oh, right there. Wait, so close. In even tree row. Down. Yes, down. So close.
Down.
Is that moz field text? That's what you're looking
Background color for field should be used with moz field text. Is like I'm looking for the actual like entry for it. Is it? Do they not have a? They just don't have it. Oh, system colors. I think we've found the mother lode, Yuri. Check this out. Success. So apparently there's something called forced colors mode, detectable with the forced colors media query, which is really good because we want to make sure that the indicator, like, so the UX team at Firefox, for the team, gave me a particular spec for like what this indicator is supposed to look like. I have to abide by that specification. But if we're in a high, like forced or high contrast mode, then I have I basically have the right to override the spec, like to do what's necessary to make sure that the thing's accessible. So I can detect then, presumably, forced color mode and then override all of the rules for the indicator, which I think will really help us here. So that's good. In forced colors mode, detectable with the forced colors media query, most colors are restricted into a user and browser-defined palette. These system colors are exposed by the following keywords, which can be used to ensure that the rest of the page integrates well with the restricted palette. These values may also be used in other contexts, but are not widely supported by browsers. The keywords in the following list are defined by the CSS color module level 4 specification. The keywords are case insensitive, but are listed here with mixed case for readability. And so field text is text in input fields. Gray text is text that is disabled. Highlight, background of items that are selected. Okay, very interesting. Text of active links. Highlight text. Text in input fields. That's not exactly right. It's like text in application content. We want this. Canvas text. I think is what we want. And then for background colors, these are deprecated. But one thing to keep in mind is that these are recommendations for when you're making your website. If you're making your site accessible using color, like for contrast accessibility, these like deprecated system colors you probably shouldn't use. But in Firefox, because we only have to worry about one engine, the Firefox browser engine, Gecko, we have a little bit more latitude because we don't have to worry about like, oh, this is going to break when Safari views this website. We don't have to worry about that because the browser UI will only ever be viewed by the Firefox Gecko engine. So we actually have the ability to use some of these things. And we also have access to these like special ones. So I'm hoping we can find ones that kind of just make sense, like Moz dialogue like this probably makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Dialogue text. Yeah, we can try setting those right now actually and see what happens. Like if we force the background color in the indicator. So let me bring up the indicator again. And then if we get this right, then we can start modifying the code, and we can, actually use VS Code. So what I'm going to do inside the toolbox is I'm going to, right now, like if I were to start inspecting, it's going to try and inspect the window that I spawned the browser toolbox from.
Right.
And what I actually want to do is start selecting stuff for this indicator, which is a different window. So I have to choose that window from this list. So I choose the Webrtc Indicator window. And now I see like the HTML for this indicator window. And I can start messing with its background. So I'm going to change the background color to, what was it? Moz dialogue text.
Dialogue text?
Ooh, Moz dialogue.
Dialogue.
Yes. And look at that.
Nice.
We're in good shape.
Basically almost fixed everything, almost.
Basically, yes. I agree. And then we probably want to make sure we set the color to be dialogue text as well. I know it's already doing that, but we should probably be like explicit about it, just so that like if down the line UX tells me, let's change the color a little bit of the text, that we don't break things. Because this is the sort of thing that's actually really difficult to write automated tests for. It's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's difficult because it's a visual thing. And you basically need almost a human set of eyeballs to just verify that everything is readable in the UI, across the entire UI.
For sure. Quick question. So for the icons, what format are they in? Are they font icons? Are they SVGs?
Great question.
Those?
The icons are SVGs. And we actually have done something very interesting with the SVG, because they used to be PNGs. And PNGs, if you're not familiar with PNGs are almost like JPEGs. Like they're static images that don't scale. Like they're called rasterized images. So like it's just basically a bitmap of hard-coded values. Whereas an SVG, you can think of an SVG. This is, again, I know you know this, Yuri, but I'm telling this for the people who don't know.
Of course.
An SVG is like a series of instructions on how to draw shapes. So it's called like vector drawing. And that means it scales nicely as the shape gets bigger. So our icons now are used, these are all SVGs, which means they scale nicely. As you increase the display density and the scale of the browser, then the icons actually don't get fuzzy. That used to be a problem when they were PNGs. Like back whenever Mac OS and MacBooks started coming out with Retina displays, there were a couple of releases of Firefox where the icons were super fuzzy because we were using PNGs and they didn't scale nicely. Like it was like blowing up a 16 by 16 icon, blowing it up by 30 to 32 by 32. It made it look fuzzy. But by using SVGs, we're able to sidestep that issue. And the other thing we can do is via CSS, we can tell the SVG how to draw itself. So separate from the file, let me find the image for the drag indicator. Is that? No. What is the image? The image is like here. Yeah, image, ID, display share icon. So check this out. under display share icon for the image, I believe there is a rule here that sets the background image to be that SVG. And then
Okay.
I believe it's also inheriting some rules. I could be wrong about that. I am wrong about that. There's a better icon I can use. Yeah, here. So here's the drag indicator where we have the background image set to this SVG, and then there's this special Mozilla engine specific rule that says Moz context properties. And what we're doing is we're telling the SVG engine, pay attention to these two rules, these two CSS rules, and draw the icon using these colors. And like basically fill in the icon with these colors. So that means that our CSS can be used to modify the SVG. So right now the fill and fill opacities are being paid attention to, which is why this drag icon, which you can't see really well right now, I can change the color to be like red. And I believe if I, how do I choose it? Like,
Would you like a yellow, maybe?
yeah, let's do yellow. That's better. That'll be easier to see. Yellow. And I won't do any opacity. No opacity.
Yeah, it's a little.
So you can start seeing that the icon's showing up. It's like it's kind of already a difficult to see. It's supposed to be kind of a subtle, grippy icon, but you get the idea is that I can change the instructions for how the icon is displayed, and that makes it super powerful for the browser UI to not break every time someone changes the theme, because that used to be a big problem. Firefox,
Right.
you can retheme it and stuff. And if all of the icons just assume that there's a dark background, suddenly you've got like, an invisible set of icons, because like maybe you've just got dark icons on a dark background, and now you just have a black box that you can't see anything. So anyways, I think we can use some of this stuff. Like we can use the fill and fill opacity rules to set the icon color. And I think we can also set some colors on this button. You brought this up earlier. I think this is a really important thing to focus on. Let's see if we can figure out the right colors for this button. And then once I feel like once we have that information, if we feel comfortable with that, we can start hacking on some code.
For sure.
So let's look at this button.
Can we actually use let's test out using the accessibility dev tools
Sure.
for the button
Sure.
inspection?
So I've switched the accessibility tab here. I'm going to choose this button to let me choose. Now this is the problem with, so the accessibility tools were not designed to deal with a window this small. The indicator is kind of special because it's so tiny. And this isn't a problem with just the accessibility tools. It's a problem with the dev tools in general, where like I'm trying to inspect something and like this little like context indicator is covering everything up. But I can like I can inspect here and maybe check for contrast issues. So now it's just looking, it checks a bunch of nodes. So it's happy about this node now. It's happy about the text. AAA, although it says it does not meet WCAG standards for accessible text for some reason, for the red background color.
Yeah, this is a misleading error.
I wonder if it's because I modified the rule via the dev tools rather than like, because that looks wrong. This looks right. This is what we have, and this looks wrong. I agree with it though. Yellow on red would be really difficult to see.
Yeah.
I can't.
Then it looks like the button's not an issue. I think we just need to check to make sure the styling is consistent with all the other buttons, because the other buttons in the high contrast windows were all black with white outline. So
okay.
Yeah.
So let's see here. I'm gonna choose the button. Oh, I can't. Come on, give me the. All right, I'm gonna have to find it manually. Here's the button. So what we've got here is a background color, this blue, and the color itself is hard coded to this white. And so what I'm gonna do is let's see if we've got some special like button rules in here. This is the border color that goes around buttons that represent the default action for a dialog box. Button hover text, button hover face. So notice that like the button itself doesn't have a different background from the other background, and I suspect that's what it wants here is like we want the text to be probably yellow on black again with a really bright border around the button. That's my guess, because that's kind of what we've got going on with this button. Does that make sense?
Is the OK text yellow or is it white? I can't really
Oh,
tell.
I can't tell either. Let's
Can
use.
we inspect that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's absolutely inspect that.
Oh, and before we move on, Nils IRL said the icon color could be the same as the one in the URL bar.
It's the
Which
one in the
icon?
URL. Oh, the red, the sort of glowing red. Yeah, maybe for
Ah,
consistency. So I don't actually know if that's like contrast accessible, this sort of pulsing red. The other thing about the pulsing red, and this is something that I think we're still working on and improving in Firefox, is we've become aware of there's a certain type of, I don't know if it's a disability or if it's something that it has to do with migraines, motion sickness, where people, if they're viewing,
oh, like motor impairment.
yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
Where if they're seeing like a lot of animations or tearing or something, it actually
Yeah.
causes pain, like migraines, like things start going wrong and it hurts. And so we've been working on slowly reducing the number of animations whenever you have prefers reduced motion. If you tell your operating system, I don't like animations, Firefox stops doing that. And I suspect this is one of those things that does not abide by that rule, because it just kind of pulses like a recording flashing light.
Right.
And I don't think this is an accessible color. I could be wrong, but I don't think it is. The red on the black. I could be wrong. That's maybe something I could actually inspect without getting
We'd
too
have to
distracted.
inspect.
If this thing would just stop freaking out a little bit there. Yeah. Identity box, icon.
Is
No.
it the Moz DevTools highlighted rule? It looks to the right.
Sorry, what, Moz DevTools
I was looking at the styles for the elements.
styles. Over here?
Yep. If you
Moz
go
DevTools.
down. Yep.
Oh, so this rule, this is kind of weird. This rule is actually set by the DevTools whenever it's adding the outline when you're
Oh,
hovering stuff over. And for some reason, it sticks around sometimes in the list.
interesting.
It's very misleading. I think this is the image for. Oh no, I'm wrong. Where is the image for the glowing? Ah, it's here. This is the image. WebRTC sharing icon. It's red. Nope, that's the highlight. Here it is, red on black. And so let's see if we can figure out the accessibility analysis, contrast. Actually, what I can use is this. If that
The glitching.
glitching would just get out of the way.
Glitching on Twitch.
Glitching on Twitch. That's how we do. Let's see. Page icon, save to pocket, view forward, back, minimize, demo. These are menus. It's like, where's it going to be? In the toolbar. It's like the URL bar. View site information. Here it is. Text leaf. No, that's what site we're on. You know what? I don't think this indicator is accessible at all.
Is it even showing up in the accessibility outline?
I don't see it. I got a feeling it's not here. Back,
Yes,
forward,
Mastic
reload.
underscore warrior. Definitely Twitch glitches.
Twitch glitches. View site information verified by Let's Encrypt. So we've got like the lock icon, or the lock button is listed, and then it switches over to the URL bar.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's a problem. There's no indication that you're actually sharing your screen in the browser window. We have this new indicator that exists now to try and share that, and we're trying to make that accessible with this bug. But in the browser window itself, the sort of pulsing recording icon is not accessible.
Right. So we have no way of actually notifying the user that currently you're sharing your screen.
Outside of this indicator, yeah, exactly.
Right.
I wonder if that's on purpose. Like, I don't know. One of the things I've heard is that, like, I mean, a screen reader, I've heard a screen reader before, and I've heard what it sounds like whenever someone who's really used to a screen reader is working on it, and like is working with it. It's just lots of information because they get really, really good at absorbing information really, really, really quickly. And what you want to avoid is repeating something. Like if something is showing up and going away and showing up like this indicator, like almost pulsing, that does not translate very well to a screen reader because like while they're viewing a website, they like while they're having it read to them, you don't really want to have the voice going like, by the way, you're sharing. By the way, you're sharing your screen. Check it out, you're sharing your screen.
Still sharing.
Yeah, you're still sharing. Yeah. So I don't exactly know what the best way of like maybe it was on purpose that they didn't have that there, and that's what this indicator is for, really, is to sort of be this persistent window to kind of be the reminder like, hey, you're sharing your screen.
I'd be curious to know if this you're sharing your screen dialog window at the bottom, I'd be curious to know if it has any sort of alert or alert dialog accessibility properties attached to it, because maybe that is the alert itself. When it shows up as like an alert or alert dialog in the accessibility outline.
We can look. That's a great question. Webrtc Indicator.xhtml. So this is the markup file.
Okay.
And I seem to recall, I think this was added by James Tay, who works at Mozilla, that there is a alert role on the body. And the way that works in like Firefox for browser UI that's written in HTML, this is enough to clue in our accessibility mechanisms to tell the screen readers, hey, there's an alert. Like a thing has been brought into the foreground. Here it is. And we're also using ARIA labels and ARIA roles, I believe, to make it clear, like to screen readers, what this thing is. Like there's a group here. The button is grouped with the text that's just before it, and then this labeled by attribute is updated dynamically depending on what is being shared. I think we do that right here. So for example, if you're sharing your screen, or you're sharing a window, or you're sharing a browser window, then we'll update the ARIA label so it knows what to tell the screen reader to say.
Right, and I think you bring up a valid point, and this is definitely an important lesson in how can we make sure that not only users who don't have a visual impairment are aware of alerts, but you also want to make sure that those who may have a visual impairment are still aware of alerts, but also you're not disrupting the flow of kind of how they're digesting the information on the web page. You want to make sure that they're aware of the alert, but you don't want to kind of like shove it down their throat.
Exactly.
Like, alert.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's almost like you have to remember that for a screen reader user, it's almost like they're getting it really a character at a time. It's coming in like a single stream. And so, we take it for granted whenever we have like a visual input, we can absorb multiple streams of information simultaneously, and we can have like sort of ambient background stuff. But that doesn't really work when your stuff's coming in from a screen reader. Your ears accept, like, unless you can somehow listen to two voices at the same time, which I can't. I like that's when my brain starts to melt, is if I'm listening to two voices at the same time. I just shut down. I can't do it. I hear nothing. And so you don't want to be annoying. How do you not be annoying? I highly recommend, actually, if you haven't done it, it's been a couple of years since I've done it, but for people out there who have never tried listening to what it's like to use a screen reader, check it out. Just see what it's like to consume the web using a screen reader, because it's gonna blow your mind how inaccessible the web is. Like you go to facebook.com or something, and it will just be like, there's a text input or something, like there is an image.
Yeah, or in the words of Mastic_Warrior, it's like, knock, knock, who's there? Interrupting cow.
Yeah. Alert. You're sharing your screen, by the way. Interrupting cow. Okay. Where I think the last thing I was hoping we could do was figuring out the right values for this button, and before we start getting into the hacking on it, and the values, where is it, that we had found were like, here's the button. It wasn't actually it was the colors. Danny Colin said it looked white to him. The background colors on the alert, the OK button. So that's actually what I wanted to check out. Let's see. This button right here. Look at the OK button. What's the color? The color is Moz field text, but it's been overridden. It's button text. Button text. Okay, let's use that. So that's easy. We go back to, I've lost track of what I'm doing.
To the docs.
You know, part of me wonders whether or not we should start putting some notes inside, because I'm gonna forget all these rules. Like if we open up the themes again, we can start actually typing some stuff up.
For sure.
So where is it? Webrtc Indicator. So like the button text. I'm gonna do this at the bottom. Feel free to like override these or like make these better, but it's like button text for stop button. We want button text. And then like background for dialogue is, what was it? What did we say?
Dropping me the link to the docs that you're looking at?
Sure, absolutely. Like this one right here. I'm going to put this actually as a reference in here.
Perfect.
Whoopsie daisy. I keep forgetting. Windows. So when I switch back and forth between Windows and Mac OS, I forget sometimes to switch command and control, and it leads to hilarious results. Okay, so the background for the dialogue, what was that supposed to be? It was something like...
I think we were going to use Moz dialogue and Moz dialogue text.
That's exactly right. Moz dialogue. And then like color for dialogue is Moz dialogue text. And then, so the button text color, what's the button background color? I don't think it has one, right? Like it's got color for the face of the button if you're hovering it. So it's got a hover color.
Right.
Which should be 3D face or button face when the mouse is not over it. Okay, button face. Button face. Button background color. Button face. Button hover color. Button hover face.
I love these names.
I love them. I love them too. Face. Now, what's the active color? Active, for the people who don't know. So buttons have these different states where, like, if you hover, if you just have a button, you're not touching it or you're not hovering it, it's in like the default state. And then when you hover it with your mouse cursor, you have the hover state. It's active whenever you're like clicking on it, whenever you're actually like pressing down on it. And then there's the focus state, which is like if the button is what's receiving events, if you were to like hit spacebar to like to activate it. So if you use tab, for example, to keyboard focus it, then you've got it in the focus state. So these are the different states of a button. And you can influence some of these things using like some of these rules, at least in the Mozilla code base. So what's the active color? Button hover text. Do they have like active text? Button active window border, active window caption, inactive border, Chrome, Mac, Chrome active, active hyperlink. They don't. Maybe there is no active color.
Maybe there's a default.
Yeah, like if there's like a fallback, like if it's already Moz button hover face or Moz button default, and then you like active, it'll do its own. I think that's possible. So let's leave that rule alone for now. So boop, boop, boop. Maybe nothing. Then background for the dialogue, and then you were talking about like the buttons over here for the minimize button. Minimize button.
Did we figure out if that's a button or is it just an icon?
It's a button.
Is it like okay?
Yeah. Let me turn off the inspector thing. I would love to not be inspecting. How do I? not inspect. I think I have to not inspect by closing the thing. But if I click on this, in theory, this should go away. But there is a bug. This is not minimizing. But in theory, that's supposed to minimize. I don't know why it's not minimizing. Oh, there's a bunch of errors in the console. The browser is glitching out so hard. And for some reason, this is not minimizing. But yes, that's a button. It is a button.
Okay.
So I'll worry about the reason why it's not minimizing another time. So where were we? So minimize button. I presume we probably want it to be just like the other button, right? Like,
right. I think we want to use similar rules.
Okay. So minimize button.
SmurfD0 said maybe press the OK button first on the warning dialog.
Maybe. Sure. Let's try that. And then let's see. Let's try minimizing it. I don't know what's going on here.
We broke it.
We broke it. Sometimes opening DevTools breaks the browser. Our bad. No lie. Like the Browser Toolbox, like the DevTools are built first for web developers, and then us browser developers get to like sort of draft on the hard work of the DevTools team. So sometimes the DevTools don't exactly work with the browser, but it's usually fixed pretty quickly. So minimize button background color, that will also be Moz, or just button face. Minimize button hover color.
Moz button hover face.
Moz button hover face. And then no active color, but I'll put it in just in case. Color. And then we have these two icons. So we've got, and we also have separators. That's the other thing that's probably hard to see here, is that there are separators between these items. And I don't know if there's like, are there rules on separators? Separator. I don't know what you should do about separators. Like, I wonder if like these sort of like glowing blue things that VS Code, like I'm going to special shout out to the folks at Microsoft. So Microsoft is really good at making their stuff work with like high contrast mode out of the box. They like the accessibility team, as much of a problem as I have with the Edge team switching to Chromium, I have to tell them that their accessibility story for like the contrast stuff is usually really tight. They have a really good team working on accessibility. And so I wonder if this blue color is the right color for like the separators. I just don't know what that value would be in this list. Maybe we'll leave separators for now, and instead we'll look at icons.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea. We could always default the dividers or separators to white. That's definitely compliant.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. So let's say separators white, and then icons. So what are the right colors for icons? Part of me wonders if what we probably want to do here is look at like inspiration built in to the browser. Like these icons are yellow. We probably want to use the same color, right? Like if the home button is yellow, then probably we want the icons in here to be yellow. So what value are these using? So I'm actually going to open up. This is killing me. I'm going to stop this. The glitching is this whole. Okay, the indicator is broken. Everything is broken. I'm going to reload the page, and now I'm going to open up the Browser Toolbox, and we are going to look at the value, the color value of like the home button. Fill, toolbar, button, icon, fill, opacity, and current color. Current color. It inherits the color. And what's the color? Color is caption text? Inactive caption text. This is really unclear. Maybe what I should do is look at the computed value. Well, that's no good. It just tells me like the raw value. Oh, Moz dialog text.
Moz dialog text again for the win.
Yeah. And you know what? We might actually get that via the well, how do we set? I'm thinking how we set that. I think just the fill value. So let's bring up that indicator again. I'm going to try choosing a different
I think
window.
it is actually the fill value.
Okay. Okay, great. So if we set the fill value to Moz dialog text, icons fill Moz dialog text. And then I think that'll do it for most of them. Are we forgetting anything? Maybe button borders.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay.
But could we inspect the icons one more time?
Sure.
Just in case it's using another fill value, because I can't quite remember.
The icons up here?
Any yellow icon.
Sure. I'm gonna try and pick one that's like less complicated. Let's say this button. I presume this button is less complicated. It might actually be the exact same complication. Toolbar button, here are the rules. And the toolbar button 1 class is where I think a lot of the, like if I uncheck that, that's gonna take the color away. So it's this current color value. And current color is, I think, a special value. I think basically it's like take whatever the color is and make it the fill.
It's inheriting.
Yeah, so it's inheriting the value of the color, and the value of the color that it inherits is probably the color that's set on the document, would be my guess. Color. Var toolbar color, which is var toolbar non-LWT text color, which is what? Toolbar non-LWT text color. I'm just going to look that up real quick. Toolbar non-LWT. So this is using SearchFox. We're going to look this up real quick. Text color is Moz dialog text. On Linux and on Mac OS, it's this hard-coded value. And on Windows, it's Moz dialog text again. So we might end up actually having to do this for like doing the special rules for the different operating systems. But let's just hack it into the shared CSS file for now. And then, and not worry about separating it out. Let's just make it look good, and then we'll worry about it later.
All right.
Okay. Before we continue, I think the last piece of the puzzle is knowing when to apply the color. Like, what was it called? Like force colors media query. And how do we do that? It's like, so this is how we do it. This is how you know if you're in high contrast mode. This is like media query. So I think we can start adding this. And see if that helps. So I've been doing a lot of talking. Yuri, how about we do some typing now? Like now that we've done rambling for the last little while, let's do some typing. How about you take the helm to start, and we try adding some rules to the CSS style sheet. This media forced colors rule. Let me bring up the also. I don't know. Did I send you this link to the forced colors?
No, I was just looking it up right now.
Yeah, let me send this to you over Zoom so you can refer to it. Where is it? Where's chat? There's so many windows. So many windows. Where's chat? Where's chat? I don't know where Yeah, I'm just going to drop it into the Twitch chat. Let's go into the Twitch chat. There it is.
That works. All right, sweet.
Okay. And then let's switch to the editor.
Okay, so do we want to do the buttons first or just start going?
Let's see. Maybe let's start with, if it's all right with you, how about we start with the background color? Because, like, remember how you were like, that almost fixed the whole thing? Like, I want that feeling again, personally, of like, oh, good, we made a big step here. So let's see if we can just set the background color on the dialogue. So that would be like background color dialogue. Yeah, Moz dialogue. Yeah.
Did we have a class for it?
I don't think so. For the I think it's just like body background color and
Just
then
body.
Yeah.
Sweet. Keep it simple.
Keeping it simple.
There's the autocomplete.
Nice.
All
that
right,
might actually be enough to make a big difference right out the gate. So do you mind if I rebuild and we check this thing out?
Yeah, go for it. I just saved, so you should be good on a hard refresh.
Awesome. So I'm going to do the mock build faster step. Mock build. Oh, no, not faster. Mock build faster.
Typos kill every command.
They do. I feel like I typo mock build faster a lot. Like sometimes it's 2 A's or no R or something. And I wish that mock build would just know what it is I'm trying to say. It used to be pretty good about build. Like if you say mock build, but you switch the I and the U, it goes, okay, you were probably trying to say build, and it does the build step, which is nice. Web Rtc Indicator. Let's take a look. Let's see. I'll share this one. Okay, so the background color wasn't set. Let's see.
Interesting. Can we inspect it again?
Absolutely. Maybe we're using this media query wrong. Like maybe it's not supported in Firefox. Like I just sort of assumed. What's the browser support? Rutro. That's our problem right there. This is an emerging standard. It looks like no one supports this yet. It's a flag. Yeah, this is unfortunate. We can't use it. So how do we detect?
How are other high contrast rules being set? Let's see what's going on in other files. So it looks like there's a high contrast class that gets added to the body when I think we might be able to use that. It looks like
is there? Like let's see if we can find that thing. So like if we inspect the indicator. So this is the indicator. That might be the
first step. We might need to actually add that class on.
Ooh, okay. How do we detect whenever we switch to high contrast mode? Like, is there high contrast? What was the name of the class that you said you found?
High-contrast.
High-contrast. So I'm gonna use SearchFox to see if I can find how that's added. Yeah, I see the rule that you're talking about, and it looks like there's some code in the installer to do that.
Also, I just think this is a really great opportunity to say that if you just type a smiley face in Twitch chat, that's what produces the jigsaw looking face.
The jigsaw face? Why so creepy?
Why is it so creepy? I have no idea.
So this is interesting. I can't find high contrast as a string anywhere. So like that was originally my this is for branding for the installer uses high contrast code. Yeah, that might be the problem. The installer does it this way, but the rest of the browser might not. I did find this bug. I have it in the background just in case we wanted to look at it, of a bunch of high contrast mode bugs that people have been working on over the years, and a bunch of them have been closed. I wonder if we can use, like, just kind of examine some of these bugs to see which ones are, like, see if there's an example we can build off of.
Yeah, and
Like,
just for reference, Dr. Goldfire said the installer stuff is all custom, so that won't help.
good stuff. Thank you. That's right. Molly worked on the installer. I reviewed some of that code. So yes, I it's definitely custom. I recall it's using like a very, very old IE engine. Okay, let's just pick this one. Icons in the main menu need more opacity in high contrast mode and on Linux. So here's a patch that was written 4 years ago. And how was this used? So class highlight text. So these SVGs, this doesn't help. I want to look at CSS.
Are they adding a class directly on the SVG?
Good question. It looks like they import some include file, and then they set a class in the SVG for highlight text. So let's maybe see what icon colors. Oh, it doesn't exist anymore. That's part of the problem of looking into the past. Maybe this isn't the best bug to look at. Let's look at something more recent. I think this one was 3 years ago. How did we know to use high contrast mode? I feel like it would probably have to be something like Moz Windows default theme, except it'd be like Moz Windows high contrast theme or something. What does it mean whenever it's 0?
Can you do a quick command find and see, or control find and see if we can look for contrast or
in Searchbox? Yeah.
Yeah, just hoping like someone added a comment somewhere for high contrast values.
Yeah, let's do that. So again, we're gonna ignore the installer stuff, but here we have browser themes, panel, UI. That doesn't look like it's set specially for a particular mode. Here we go. Minimize high contrast. So it looks like we use special images in particular cases. This might be a fruitful. Again, it's inside this like Moz Windows default theme 0. That might be code for like a really obscure way of representing high contrast mode. Accents, window. Compositor, default theme. I'm curious if there's documentation somewhere on what that means. Moz Windows default theme 0. Yeah, non-standard. If the user is using one of the default themes, Luna, Royale, Zune, or Arrow, this is 1. Otherwise, it's 0. Okay. So it just means that they're not using one of the default themes.
Okay.
Well, maybe let's use that for now, because that appears to be what's used elsewhere. And then maybe we can need info. The person who worked on this bug, the person who worked on some of these other high contrast bugs. I know the developer Dow Gottwald. He's really, really, really good at our theming code and probably knows exactly what rules we need. But for now, I suggest we use that same mechanism, wherever it was, Moz Windows default theme 0. This is what I suggest we use in the media rule. So I'm going to switch.
Can you that in the chat or
sure
copy
thing.
And paste it in VS Code?
Sure thing. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to drop it in right here.
Nice.
And there's a typo. All right. So fingers crossed. Now, this is the sort of thing that makes me think that we definitely want to make sure that like this rule is only run in the Windows version of this theme, but we can worry about that later. But it's what comes to mind. So let's close those. Mock build faster.
Mastic_warrior said, is it not possible to ask the window manager? I don't know what that would be in Windows besides Arrow or Metro.
Almost certainly there's an API for a browser, for an application on Windows. I'd expect Molly to know this more than certainly more than I would, because Molly really understands like the Win32 APIs and whatnot. But I suspect that Windows would be able to tell you. It's less of will Windows tell you, it's will the Firefox Gecko layer tell our CSS layer whether or not high contrast mode is enabled, because that's what we have access to. Unfortunately, from CSS, there's not really a great way for us to like reach down and talk to Windows directly. So we have to like make it so that the information from Windows somehow bubbles up to our CSS engine, so that we can make use of it. And that might involve like, doing deep engine development, which is probably outside of the scope of this stream for now. But let's try this. Hey, there we go.
We got something.
Yuri, we're on the right track. We are on the right track.
It feels
and
good.
Look, it minimizes now. Whatever broke the indicator is working again. So we're in good shape. I realize it's already like we're like an hour and 45 minutes into the stream. Let's do one more, and then maybe we'll call the stream here if that's okay, because I can feel my voice starting to go. And I don't want to wreck my voice. But I'm having a really, really great time. Like, we're making good progress here. I'm learning a lot.
Must protect the announcer's voice.
Must protect the voice. You can tell it's like
do the Honda thing. Please do the Honda thing.
Please purchase a Honda. This stream is brought to you by Honda. Purchase a Honda. Anything from Honda.
Honda,
I don't know.
Sponsor us.
That's right. A lawnmower, car, hats, whatever Honda sells these days. Snowmobile. Buy a Honda. Okay, I'm going to do it. Buy a Honda. Look at how glitchy this is right now. What is going? This isn't even Firefox being glitchy.
Wild.
This is Windows just glitching out hard. Or maybe it's my VM. I have no idea. But like the painting is just completely wrecked. Oh yeah.
Oh, love it. This is bringing me back to like 2004.
I'm gonna throw up. This is bizarre. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing by clicking that button. I wonder if that fixed it. No, it did not. But now we can add some more rules. Let's maybe do the button, like the stop button. So the stop button, if you stay down here, I'll go up and I'll show people what the rules for the stop button are.
Sure.
Like the stop button has an ID. It's a class. It's a class called stop-button. And so we can set the background color on it. And there's a hover rule, but there's no active rule, interestingly. But so what I think we can do is we can override this class's background color and color, and then some of the other rules.
Sweet. Oh,
background color. So what do we want the background? Button background color is going to be button face, without any kind of prefix, interestingly. Very nice, very nice. And then the color itself will be... Oh, good question. What's the color supposed to be? I think we determined it's that like... I
think button text.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's what it is. You got it. Button text.
Right.
I didn't write it. Oh, it's right here. Yeah, button text. And then what else? It was like when you hover it, we want to set Moz button hover face. Oh, now here I see your impulse to use like less or sass or something. For the people who don't use less or sass, there are these like really, really nice libraries. Would you call it a library? It's like a utility that can take in basically what CSS should have been, which is like this thing that allows you to not repeat yourself as much. And it's like a better syntax for CSS. and it intakes that markup, which looks like CSS. It's almost like CSS and more.
It's
And then
CSS is like it's CSS times like a million.
yeah,
So robust.
less CSS. Check it out .org, and you can see some of the way it's used. Like some of it will look really familiar because it's CSS, but then you can get more things like you can nest rules like this. Like you definitely couldn't do that with normal CSS. But what happens is the less parser thing will convert this into really nice CSS that the browser can consume. So that's just sort of a quality of life thing for front-end developers who have had to struggle with like very repetitive blocks of CSS, especially since like for the longest time, CSS didn't have things like variables. Just like the basic things like variables. We now have CSS variables, which is nice. So for, button hover, I think it's supposed to be Moz button hover face. And then we didn't set anything for active, so maybe we can just like leave it be. Is that supposed to be the color of the text or the color of the background? Moz button hover face.
Is it the color of the text or?
I think it's supposed to be the background color.
Gotcha.
So let me put
And
background.
one thing to note, just in continuation on what Mike was saying about the less in Sass. So my instinct is definitely to nest style rules in sort of like the Sass way, but I completely disregarded the fact that I'm in a CSS file and can't do that. Which is why you'll see me on line 191 actually writing out the hover style rules for the stop button instead of actually nesting within this code block for stop
like
button.
What was your instinct? You were like in here and you were going to do something, right?
Yeah,
like
I was going to do like and hover. So like similar to and hover. This is what you'll normally be able to do in Sass or less. But since we're in a regular CSS file, you can't quite, use those fancy.
We don't have the niceties.
Yeah, you have to write everything out, which is totally okay too, because it all compiles to CSS in the end. So.
Yeah, it's a quality of life thing. Okay, so I saw you just saved. Let's take a quick peek. I'm gonna shut down the browser, and we're gonna build faster. Do. And we're gonna run.
Woohoo.
And browser starts up, and then we go to this test site. Let's bring up the dialog. Okay, so we've got the right background and the right text. We don't have a clear border around it. I think we need the border color set. Yeah. Let's do that last bit, and then I suggest we call it a day. But I think we're really close.
Sweet.
So let's
shut this down. Sworn we had the button border.
Yeah, there was a rule I think that was listed over here. It was like where was it? Colors. Border. Button border. Oh, I'm in the wrong site. Yeah, button border. Active border, active window, button highlight, button shadow. So these are apparently deprecated system colored keywords, but like I said, we can still use these. We should feel safe to use these. Button highlight is the color of the border facing the light source for 3D elements that appear 3D due to that layer of surrounding border. Right, it's two different colors. So it's like we want top and left, I think, to be button highlight, and right and bottom to be button shadow. I think typically that's how it works.
Wait, what about if you keep scrolling down to -moz -button default? It has the border color that goes around.
Oh, that's that's much better. That's much better. Yeah. Let's see it in action.
All right, sweet.
Moz button default. I actually don't see it being used much in the code, but let's check it out.
Okay. Try to use it?
Yeah, let's try and use it.
All right. I assume it just has like the color value, so I'll just use the shortened border value, which defines the border thickness
Okay.
for the first value, 1 pixels, and then solid, because we don't want a dashed line, we just want a regular solid line. And then I'll use the dash moz dash button default value for the color and
Sounds
see if we
good.
can get this working.
I love it. All right, let's build. I don't think I've ever, or not, I shouldn't say ever. It's been a long time since I've pair programmed before. I think last time I pair programmed was in school, and it's a great feeling to have someone kind of like ride along with you and like figure stuff out with you.
Yeah, for sure. And if you don't mind me pausing,
Sure.
because I got added in the chat for the
Sure.
first
Yeah.
time, Danny Colin Com said at Yuri Wims, we need that, but not only for at rule. I assume you're talking about the nested styles, Danny Colin Com?
Uh,
Yay, nay?
so he's referring to he linked to this CSS working group draft for allowing nested at rules. Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah, for
So
sure.
and it's still pretty active. This was only filed 27 days ago by Lee Veru. If you're not familiar with Lee Veru, she is very involved in like she's a great follow on Twitter if you want to know stuff about I think SVGs in particular, but also
Following
CSS.
her now.
But yeah, this is interesting. If we could get some nested stuff, then like the more we can bring over from less and CSS, the just the better. Or like less and Sass, the better, because then like the browsers can optimize for it, developers can write for it. It's more comfortable. The ergonomics are better,
Exactly.
and we get to skip a build step. Like you get to skip the whole like, oh, I have to run it through the less compiler. Okay, so where were we? We have the site here. Let's bring this up. Let's take a look at our border. Hey, there's our border. Look at it. Whoop whoop. Congratulations. We have I think the text and this button are very accessible. I think we're in really
Yes.
decent shape.
It may not be super pretty, but it's really important that it's accessible at the very least.
Absolutely. There's more to do. Like we've got the icons to do, got to figure out the separators, but my voice is starting to give out. And also Yuri and I are both on holiday today, technically. So if it's all right with you, Yuri, I think we should call it here. Are you cool with that?
Oh, yeah, totally.
All right. I'm going to switch my screen back to our talking heads, if that's okay. So I've stopped sharing on Zoom, and now I'm going to switch OBS to our side-by-side heads. There we are.
Woohoo!
Hey,
Master
we
Warrior
survived.
said, great job.
Oh, yay! Thank you so much,
Yay!
Molly. Or sorry, that was Mastic Warrior. I thought you said Molly said it, but like, thank you, Mastic Warrior. Thank you, Yuri. Thank you, everyone who was watching. That was a lot of fun. I actually learned a bunch of stuff that I didn't know about colors, system colors.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me. And thank you, everyone, for being so welcoming and so engaging. It was so much fun, honestly, to read through your comments and laugh with you. So thank you. Made my job a lot easier.
Outstanding. We please come back. I hope we can do this again, Yuri. I hope we can find some time
Hell
where we
yeah.
can like keep hacking on some bugs together. And hopefully we don't have as many like visual glitches as this time. Like that, there were some really bizarre glitches throughout.
Yeah.
But I'm surprisingly the technology stack stayed up. My little laptop, which I
I
can hear is
know.
like overheating, like it's
Mine
like a
too,
hovercraft
actually.
right now, but it survived. I know I should knock on wood, but we made it. We made it to the end.
We did. Your computer didn't explode. So success.
Thanks, Apple. So yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you, Yuri, special guest Yuri Wims. You should follow Yuri. Check out the Twitter handle that's
Follow
under
me.
her floating head over here. It's down here. It says underscore Yuri J Wims on Twitter. You should check her out. She works at Ecobee. And they make smart thermometers. They're thermostats rather. And
We
others
make
at home.
devices we make smart home devices,
Yeah.
smart thermostats, door sensors, and we even just came out with a new camera for monitoring. So definitely check us out. We're doing a lot of cool, innovative things. Definitely chat with me, follow me. I would love to come back and engage with you and monitor the chat. It's the best job. So
Very good. And special thanks to Abby, who apparently like this was her
thanks,
idea.
Abby.
Thanks, Abby. This was a great idea. All right. I'm going to call it here. Thank you so much, Yuri. Thank you so much, audience. And we'll hopefully see you next week. Happy Canada Day if you're celebrating. And we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. And I'm going to play the exit theme. I didn't really tell you that there's also an exit theme for
there's
this
also
series.
an exit song.
It's the same song. It's the same song, but it just doesn't have like the little intro. But here we go.
Let's do it.
Thanks again, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.